Welcome to Franchise Spotlight, where we showcase unique franchise opportunities that give you the chance to build wealth, create a legacy, and take greater control of your future. Today, we're exploring Painter1, a home-based painting franchise built by the same team behind 5 Star Painting, where every owner holds a stake in the system-wide equity pool. Let's put the spotlight on Painter1. I'm Scott Elliott, franchise consultant and founder of New Chapter Consulting. My guest today is Jason Leber. He's the managing partner and co-founder of Painter1. Now, Jason spent years as director of marketing and brand manager for 5 Star Painting, helping grow that system from roughly 30 locations to nearly 140 before he set out to build a franchisee-first painting franchise based on all the lessons he and his partner learned. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott. I really appreciate it.
So let's just dive in at the very beginning. Let's just start from the beginning. What is Painter1? What's the business, and who are your customers that your franchisees are actually serving?
Yeah, great question. So it's in the name, Painter1. We are primarily a residential painting operation. We focus primarily on the residential repaint segment, which is homeowners looking to repaint either the inside and or outside of their homes. We also do commercial and other things as well, but the vast majority of our owners really focus primarily on that residential repaint market. And so our core consumer are homeowners in essence, and that's really who we're going after.
Good. Yeah, it's really important to know your target market so you can serve them well. So that's a nice clear picture. Great. Now,
exactly.
The painting trade, it's one of those very fragmented service categories in home improvement. Like it's a lot of people can chuck in a truck, man in a van, whatever. They can, grab a brush, grab a ladder and go offer their services. So there could be a lot of local operators. There are many times aspiring entrepreneurs may assume that painting is just too saturated for them to want to get into. What makes Painter1 stand out in a market like that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And that's, like you said, that's one that I receive all the time as well. And so what we have found in this very fragmented industry is that obviously there's a ton of demand. That's why there's so much competition. So that's a great thing. It's not like there's scarcity involved. So when we talk about marketing, lead generation, not to say that that's not an issue or a problem, but it's relatively easy to generate leads and get, the phone ringing. So then you come to the point of, your competitors, your competition. And just as you've said, it's exactly right. Primarily, you're going up against these chuck in a truck, stand in a van kind of guys. Typically, the way that we have found it to be is homeowner inquires for a painting company to come out to their house. Let's say they submit 6 bids essentially, or they get 6 people that get their information. Of those 6, typically in our experience, about half of them are going to ghost the customer altogether. They're too busy. They don't have the right CRM or the right tools in place to keep track of all the leads that might be coming in. And so again, roughly half, you probably just won't even hear from them, or you'll hear from them once and then they'll fall off. So that leaves about 3 more, 3 painting companies. Of those 3, typically, this is where we get into the fragmentation of the industry. 2 of them are going to be these chuck in a truck, stand in the van kind of guys. Nothing against them, but they're going to show up in these ratty old painter clothes. They've got a beat up vehicle out front. Probably no branding, no website, no referrals, reviews online to look to, any of that stuff. And so we've all kind of been there, done that. They might be cheaper, but as a homeowner, and home being probably most people's biggest investment, it's kind of scary to hand this project off to somebody like that. And so then you come down to the one professional of the group, and that's the Painter1. And that's the guy that shows up with a branded Painter1 vehicle, wearing the branded, business casual Painter1 attire, looking right, has the technology in hand, tablet, going through, putting in measurements for an estimate. You can refer to our website, our social media, our online reviews. the 2-year plus warranty, all the warm fuzzies that make the customer at the end say, why would I go with anyone else? And so
Mhm.
that's really kind of where we stand out among the crowd in this, concern of, saturated markets and things like that. And so really that's kind of the way that we position it with our owners. And that's, when we train them and go through how to provide estimates and that kind of thing, that's really what we're gearing it towards, is that type of experience.
No, yeah, appreciate that description. And do you find also, Jason, in markets where maybe you do have some good painters, solo operators, maybe small teams that just aren't really good at selling their own services, but they may deliver quality work. Can you form subcontractor relationships with them and kind of just become, you benefit, they benefit, everybody wins? It's not really competition. It's a part of your labor pool.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the things that I talk about all the time. We are a subcontractor model, our opportunity. So you don't need employees. You're hiring these painters as 1099s, as a subcontractor. And that's exactly right, what you mentioned. These chuck in a truck, stand in a van guys that we're talking about, 9 times out of 10, those are the ones that end up being your labor force, your subcontractors. And what you'll find is typically these subcontractors have either tried to venture out on their own, hence the example we just gave, and realize it's a lot of work, it's a lot of investment. I've got to, it's really just not for them. And they soon realize that their, profession is painting and probably not running a business operation. And so that's a lot of times what you'll find is more the symbiotic relationship, like you mentioned, where we, as the professional, as the company, we provide the marketing, the warranty, the leads that are coming in, all that good stuff. We're feeding that to you, Mr. or Mrs. Subcontractor, so that all you have to worry about is, passing on the paycheck to your guys, your helpers, and keeping the work going. Making sure that things are being done on time, the way that they're supposed to, done right, so on and so forth. And so that's really where they live. That's what they focus on. And it's just like we talked about earlier in the importance of knowing your core consumer and focusing on that. Same goes with our painters. That's really kind of what we want them to focus on is doing the work, doing the painting, and that's what they do best.
Nice. Good, good. So we're starting to see a picture of the skills it takes to run a successful painting business. So you need a good painter or painters or contractors. But let's talk about the profile of the successful Painter1 owner.
Mhm.
What characteristics do they have? What are they bringing to the table? What are you looking for in a franchisee?
That's a great question. So I would actually start in reverse. What we are not looking for is, not in a bad way, but one of these chuck in a truck, stand in a van type individuals, somebody that has painting background, painting experience. You might think that that would be a natural fit. And, oh, this so and so person's been painting for 10, 20, whatever years. And now let's elevate them to, business ownership. And we have found that that's not the case. It is true, as the saying goes, you really can't teach an old dog new tricks. And so, in contrast, what we have found to be attributes of the most successful owners are business analytics, proficiency rather in sales, marketing, those types of things. We truly are a business that is run by the numbers, and so somebody who has come from a maybe sales or engineering type background. Military is another really great one as well. Somebody that can follow proven systems and processes and see it all the way through. That is really what makes a great owner. And so, we hear it all the time, but it's so true. Working on the business, not in the business, and that's that contrast I was talking about. And so, people that come from a non-painting background, myself being one of them,
Mhm.
we are able to have that higher overview look on the business and see all the different things that are happening. The marketing and the sales and customer support, all these different things, and those kind of culminate into these KPIs, these key performance indicators. And that's really the importance of, again, what makes a good owner perform well is a strong understanding of their KPIs and the ability to continually measure the health and strength of their business through those KPIs.
Hmm. No, that's a good clear picture as well. Now you are looking for, even though don't want somebody who's going to be picking up a brush and doing the painting, you are looking for active owners, not people who are looking to just invest in, hey, I'm gonna throw some money at a painting business, hire some painters, and I'll come back at the end of the quarter and see how much money they made, right? So what does
Exactly.
ownership look like? What activities are they doing if they're not brushing and painting the walls, right? What exactly are they doing day by day?
Yeah, great question. So that's exactly right. We're looking primarily for owner operators, somebody that is going to leave their full-time job if they've got one, or maybe they just got laid off, whatever it might be, and they're
Mhm.
looking to dive into a business, something that they can, really wrap their everything around, invest all their time and effort into, and that's the person that we are looking for. And so, really, what it comes down to, I distill it to three primary functions of the owner, the first
Mhm.
being the estimating. And if you were to ask most of our owners, they'll tell you that's the most fun part of the business, because it's a happy service that we're providing, right? It's not some sort of disaster relief or, my roof caved in, my basement flooded. This is
Mhm.
transforming your typically older or, just home that hasn't been refreshed or repainted in a while and making it look brand new, or even changing it up entirely with a, new color. And so again, it's a very happy service that we're providing. And so doing that estimating, that's really kind of what you're pitching, what you're providing is we're going to give you this great service, this great outcome. And 9 times out of 10, the consumer is really surprised with how little it's going to cost them. Because as we all know in home services, home improvement, it might be sound really cool to get a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel, but
Yeah.
or the roof, like I mentioned, but those can be
Mhm.
astronomically expensive. Um, our average job size is about $3,500 to $4,500, and so that's kind of the average, give or take,
Mhm.
complete exterior or interior, uh, refresh of somebody's home. So providing that estimate, having that experience with the customer is job number one, I would say. Number two
Okay.
is project management, overseeing your crews. You've got maybe 3 or 4 crews running simultaneously, making sure that they're getting everything done the way that they should on time, so on and so forth. Pretty straightforward. And we've got phenomenal software to help with that as well. And then third and final is kind of what we were talking about earlier with, working on the business, not in the business. And that is just the general business management. Again, going back to KPIs, reporting, the importance of understanding your numbers, all that good stuff. That's really what kind of culminates that third role, if you will, is just
Mhm.
that general business management. So, what you didn't hear me talk about, of course, is the phones. You don't need to worry about that. We've got an admin service, not a call center, but an admin service that
Oh,
takes
okay.
care of all
Mhm.
the phone stuff. Bookkeeping, we've got an in-house bookkeeper that manages all your books for you. Marketing, not to say that you don't have to deal with marketing, but we've got a marketing team that really drives 80 to 90% of your leads for you, so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
we as a
Mhm.
franchisor, the franchise system, that's the value that we bring, is kind of filling in the gaps, fulfilling all these other roles so that you as an owner are focusing primarily on those three items.
Mhm. No, yeah, thanks for that, laying that out, because sometimes people just don't think about, what am I doing if I'm not on the job, right? So
Right.
I think there's what you described is clearly a tremendous amount of high value work that an owner should be doing, right? Now,
Definitely.
whatever it is, it's working, right? Because Painter1 has grown steadily since you began franchising. What is it, 2015, right? You continue to open new
Correct. Yep.
territories. Yeah. So if
Yep.
someone's thinking about this for their own local market, what are the things they should be looking at to judge whether they're a good fit for a Painter1 territory? What do you say to that? If it sounds like, am I even a good market for Painter1?
That's another really good question. I would say honestly for us, it kind of just comes down to population. And
Mhm.
that's really what I would look at if I was somebody, interested in the Painter1 franchise. And so I would say no less than maybe 250,000 in population, or roughly 120,000 households. And so
Okay.
those are kind of the two numbers I would be looking at. Um, another really easy way to check and see is if there is another painting franchise already established in the area.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of leveraging their legwork, they have probably done some market research and seen if it's a viable area and allowed a franchise to be there. And so obviously, the answer is yes if somebody's already there.
That's a good
But that's
point,
that's
right?
really all it comes down to is
Mhm.
population size.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, because anywhere there are homes, there's painting to be done,
That's
right? So
exactly right. Yep, that's
it
exactly
matters
right.
so much if it's owner occupied homes versus rental properties, or is it really if it's just a place people live, there's a painting need?
Yeah, I mean, more the latter. If there's, a structure there, then it's going to need to get painted regardless of
Mhm.
who owns it kind of thing. But yeah, we definitely try and not steer clear, but we don't focus so much on, apartment complexes and different
Mhm.
things like that. We do have several owners that do those and do very well with those. But again, your average owner, you're looking primarily at households, population, like I said, people that actually live here and that kind of thing. And so that's why it's so important to look at those numbers.
Okay, great. No, that's a good assessment, good estimate of whether a market's a good one. Let's pivot a bit toward resilience and risks, right? So every business faces pressure. You've got the labor costs, there's competition, there's changing technology. People often wonder how businesses are going to fare in the face of economic downturn or digital disruption, even, AI or whatever. How does Painter One hold up in those various, risks that aspiring owners are often concerned about?
Yeah, that's another great question. So obviously, we all know that nobody is immune to everything. There's no perfect solution, perfect business out there. But
Mhm.
from my own personal experience, again, I do not come from painting. To this day, I still don't know much of anything about painting itself. But I've
Mhm.
remained in this industry and love what I do simply because I have found it to be such a phenomenal business. And this discussion right now is a big part of that. So I've been at this since the '08, '09 recession,
Mhm.
COVID era,
Mhm.
elections, wars, and everything else in between. And it's not to say that, it's been, just a straight drive
Mhm.
up. But honestly, looking back at all my years' experience, I mean, it's just always, stable, steady growth. It's something that I can always look at and rely on in terms of resilience that, you know, it's always in demand. It's always needed. Now, just as you mentioned, the big word on the street is AI. Is AI coming for your job, coming for your business, and certainly we leverage AI internally with our software to help alleviate some of the mundane items and things within our software for our owners, of course. But as far as the core business that we're doing, the painting, I
Mhm.
don't know that AI is coming along anytime soon to paint a house kind of deal. So, it's one of these things that I don't mean to sound arrogant, but it's just such a strong, stable, steady, needed business that from my own experience and however long I've been doing this since I graduated college, um, I've never ever seen sharp, hard downfalls that lasted a
Mhm.
long time. I mean, again, it's just
Mhm.
always been a steady growth upward. So, like I
Mhm.
said, very passionate topic for me because it's a lot of what's kept me at this, and I just feel like it's such a good business to be a part of.
Yeah, and I appreciate your perspective, especially on AI. I think you're 100% right. The robots aren't going to be painting our houses anytime soon. But the point you made where leveraging AI in the business, that's a good sign because
Mhm.
every business is going to be disrupted in some back office function somewhere. And the fact that your system is embracing it, using it where it makes sense, whether I don't know if it's in the operational side, if it's in the lead gen sales and marketing side, not sure where exactly you're slotting in AI. Do you have a
Little
comment on
little
that or
bit of
just,
every
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
a little bit of everywhere. I mean, we go back to those numbers, those KPIs. Um, I would kinda tend to say pre, AI
Mhm.
time, if there was a lot of manual entry, a lot of manual, you gotta kind of grab this number, get this number to
Mhm.
figure out this ratio, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Obviously, our software had some of that, but now through the use of AI, I mean, whew, you can get whatever you want whenever you want, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's so much quicker and easier to generate a lot of these numbers. And as we talked about earlier, that's what this business is all about, the numbers, the KPIs. And so it's really helped in that way. And then of course with customer automation, as I mentioned, we have an admin service. So there's still human touch, human element involved in the customer interaction. But on the back end, utilizing AI to have some of the mundaneness taken away from our human operators, whether that's templates or follow-ups or different things like that, or even just passing things through a pipeline. AI has served a lot of great functionality in that regard as well. So reporting and sales automation is probably the biggest impact that it's had for us.
Great, great. Let's talk about the investment. A Painter1 franchise. This is not a brick and mortar, shop that you need some, heavy real estate investment. Can you walk us through the general investment range for Painter1, and basically what do you need to invest in to start this business?
Yeah, so I would say that we are a sub $100,000 opportunity.
Okay.
Within our FDD, there is a range, just like any franchise would have, and the range goes, I think it's from 80 to 160 something thousand. But again, I've talked with all of our owners, and I don't know anybody that has gone over 100,000 on the all-in initial investment. So that's why I confidently can say it's a sub $100,000 opportunity. Most owners are typically in the low to mid 80s, all in initial investment. And so what's included in that primarily is our one-time franchise fee of $54,500, and that's the ticket to ride, get you in the door. We've also got a 10% equity pool for all of our owners, and that's part of it, entering into the 10% owners equity pool. So that's probably the biggest chunk, obviously. After that, it's a lot of just kind of initial marketing, branding, getting your apparel, your job folders, business cards, tablet, like we had mentioned earlier, through the estimating process, different things like that. What is not needed in this all-in initial investment, equipment, sprayers, paint, all that will be handled and had by your painters. So everything that we're talking about with this initial investment is all owner stuff, all the, like I said, branding, marketing, technology, those types of things.
What about the vehicles and the vehicle wraps? Is that something that you handle as the franchisee then?
Yeah. So we recommend that owners wrap at least one vehicle for their business. And again, that's the owner's vehicle. So our recommendation is have it be something that's newer, comfortable, good on gas mileage. What you don't want is a truck, a van, something like that. That's the painter vehicle. This would be the owner vehicle that, again, you're pulling up to a homeowner's house, and you've got your vehicle looking really great out front, and you come up to ring the doorbell. And so, you're kind of envisioning what that process would look like. That's the kind of vehicle that you want. The painters, as part of the interview process, will have their own vehicle. And that, again, is typically a van, truck, something like that. And as part of the initial startup kit that we had talked about, you'll get these vehicle magnets that you'll slap on the subcontractors' vehicles. So it'll look, branded Painter1 and that kind of thing, but it's temporary, right? It's just a vehicle magnet. So that wrap, again, is just for the owner's vehicle.
Makes sense. Very good. Yeah, it's a good, as you mentioned, sub 100,000, realistically sub 100,000. And again, that's single territory. Are you typically seeing new franchisees doing multiple units, or do they typically start with one territory, or do they stay with one territory? How does that work in your world?
Yes, it's typically they start and stay with one territory. So that's another huge differentiator of ours. We operate what are called open territories. And so our owners, when they buy their franchise location, they get the entire major metro area where they reside, where they operate, as their territory. And so typically, if you can imagine, a Dallas, Texas, Salt Lake City, Utah, whatever it might be, I mean, that could be, with our competitors, 8, 10, 12 individual separate franchises. And for our owners, they're able to cover that entire area with this open territory model. And so again, part of the reason for us doing that is exactly what we're talking about here. It negates the need for them to have to buy, 3, 4, 5 territories upfront or over the course of multiple years in order to achieve their sales or revenue goals.
Yeah, I think it's a very unique and novel way of handling that. What's your response if someone who's evaluating your system starts worrying about other franchisees entering their market? You mentioned Dallas or some large metro area. I start out being the only one in town, and then maybe someday somebody else is coming. I mean, how does that work? How are you seeing that play out in reality?
Yeah, great question. So, number one, I always got to preface this. We do put a cap on the number of owners that we would allow within a given area. So there is
Okay.
a cap. We want to make
Mhm.
sure that we're, not taking away market share from multiple owners and different things like that. So there are safeguards in place, is what I would call it.
Okay.
Second, and realistically, what we have experienced, it is true. The saying goes, "Rising tides lift all ships," and that's
Mhm.
what we have found digitally, online, through marketing, brand awareness. When we've got, like in Salt Lake, where we've got 3 operators currently, each of which have multiple wrapped vehicles, to the consumer in the Salt Lake area, it looks like Painter1 is huge. You guys are all over the place. There's tons of you.
Mm.
Little do they know there's actually 3 separate operators. And
Mhm.
then, two, going back to what we had talked about way back when with marketing and lead generation and demand, there's so much out there that it's really does not ever become an issue of, oh, there's one lead per month, everybody jump on it and let's see who. I mean, there's so much
Mhm.
coming in that,
Mhm.
what we have typically found is, as an example, one owner might be putting a lot of their eggs in the basket of GLSA, the Google advertising.
Okay.
Other owner might be putting all their eggs in the Thumbtack basket. And so, they're getting leads from different places, even though they're in the same area. And so
Mhm.
again, there's just so much like that going on that, again, it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, and I think that if anybody's really concerned about that when they get to validation, they could speak with an owner in one of those markets, right, and see how it works
That's exactly
in
right. Yep,
practice. Yeah, no, I think it's good.
exactly right.
Uh, and I'm glad you touched on that. Again, one of your key messages about the value of Painter1 to the franchisee is that you built this system from the ground up with the franchisee's needs foremost in mind, right? So give us some
Exactly.
examples. Like what does a Painter1 franchisee get, in terms of maybe training, technology, ongoing support, but what are some of those franchisee focused lessons learned that you've brought to life in Painter1?
Yeah, so it really probably does start with training and ongoing support. So we have broken up our training so that it's not just what you'd call classroom style training. We only do a couple of days of classroom training at our head office in Utah, but
Okay.
then we ship you off to your mentors area. And that's really where the differentiation begins. So the mentor program that we have is, we pair each new owner with an existing Painter1 owner who has agreed to be a mentor, and you are then sent to your mentor's area to train with your mentor in the field with them, go on estimates, see projects being managed, all that good stuff. And that
Hmm.
mentor is your steward, your, overwatch for the next year, essentially. And they do
Hmm.
check-ins weekly. That mentor will actually come out to the new owner's area at various intervals throughout that first year, and it's a compensated program. So the mentor is incentivized to ensure that the new owner not only is trained up to snuff, essentially, but that they're continuing best practices, doing all the right things, because mentor is actually getting a piece of all that at the end of that year mentorship. And so it's a really great relationship, not only for the new owner, but for the mentor. It builds camaraderie that way. And who better to train and support a new owner that's just come into the system than an existing owner who's successful, doing it well, has it all figured out essentially, and can pass that knowledge on to this new owner.
Hmm.
And so again, that's really where a lot of the differentiation begins. And then some other points as well. Our technology that we've touched on, it was created by us. It's essentially a one-stop shop, do it all for you. You're not having to, you know, source other technologies for, this one's your CRM, that one's your reporting, or whatever it might be. Everything's all in one place, and created intentionally by us from our own experience. And so it's very unique in that regard, but also very powerful, where again, it can kind of do everything you need it for, your business. The 10% equity pool that we had touched on earlier is another huge differentiator.
Talk a
And
little bit about that. I love this part of your story. Yeah.
yeah. So really the way the story goes is that when the former 5-star had sold to a big franchise group, we recognized that the franchisees truly didn't recognize any value, benefit, whatever you want to call it, from the acquisition. And so we took that as a lesson learned. And when we started Painter1, we carved out a 10% equity pool, 10% of the franchise system to be owned by franchise owners. So if you own a franchise with us, you are automatically entered into that 10% pool of equity with the intention that when we go to get acquired or sell, whatever it might be one day, our owners are actually going to benefit from that. And then side note, it really does help again with camaraderie, right? There's inevitably this kind of us versus them mentality that exists in franchising where, franchisor, franchisee. And again, this helps with that as well because the franchisee owns a part of the franchisor, the franchise system. So it's really great in that regard as well. And then, of course, the territories, like we had talked about, not having the exclusive handful of zip codes that you're locked into. That's a topic I could go on and on for quite some time about. But there truly is so much benefit to doing it the way that we have it. And it was prescribed by owners at 5-star before. We were just never able to implement it. And so having implemented it here at Painter1, it's been much more successful for our owners. And that, again, all of that, as you can hear, is all owner centric. Everything is, what lesson did we learn from our past that we could implement now to better benefit our owners moving forward? And that's really what everything has been built on. Everything that we have around us focuses on that mission.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing that you've built where it's not just one or two things you obsessed over to say, hey, let's be different in this one area, right? You really took that set of lessons learned. What did owners tell us that would make their lives easier and better, that would really make a difference for them? And talk about alignment, right, with the franchisor or franchisee when they're actually a 10% pool equity, participant. I hesitate to call them owners, right? But 10% equity pool that aligns incentives very well. So I think that's great. Now,
definitely,
this next question may be a little tricky. I'm going to try to ask it. Let's see where it goes, because you just laid out a lot of nice differentiators. One thing I often like to get from the co-founders and others is, why do you think Painter1 is an attractive business, right? Like, what would you say the most attractive feature to a business person is about Painter1?
That is a really good question. The difficulty in answering is that there's so many. So if I had to narrow it down, I would say ROI is probably what comes to mind most. Your return on your investment. As long as I've been doing this, I am not aware of pretty much any other opportunity that can return your investment in a short amount of time with the least amount of effort as a Painter1 franchise. And from a business perspective, once again, when I was getting my MBA, I studied our model quite a lot. And that was one of the big things that aha moments that came from it is that, wow, it really is a great business opportunity. And that's the primary driver is the ROI behind it. Because, we know that there's tons of businesses out there, tons of franchises, tons of great franchises out there. So not bashing on any of them, but, some of them are a slow burn. It might take a long time. Some might have a big payout at the end or, whatever it might be. And for us, I think it's that speed to recovery, getting that ROI back in as short a time as possible, and then only going up from there. Again, so long as you're following the systems and processes that we have in place. But that would be the answer.
Yeah. And let's do our standard disclaimer that we always do, right? There's no guarantee that anything will return an investment. There's a lot of factors involved.
That's right.
And every prospective franchisee is going to want to do their due diligence. They're going to want to study that FDD. They're going to want to do the validation with existing owners, do the pro formas and make their assumptions. But I appreciate your comments on that, when you've observed results from existing franchisees, that's good. I like that. So.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, I'll say this. A lot of people who watch this particular interview that we've done may be weighing Painter1 against several other options and maybe, several other businesses, not just like which painting franchise should I look at, but should I be in painting or should I be in, plumbing and other home services, or should I be in senior care or in food? Like they may be thinking, what category do I go in? What's one thing you'd want them to remember about Painter1 as they continue that process? Like, what do you think would be something they should keep in mind?
Again, I'm being painted into a corner, no pun intended.
Yes,
with,
yes,
with just
pun.
one thing. Yeah, good pun. One thing I would probably that comes to mind first would be simplicity. Is probably the one thing that kind of sums it all up. Obviously, I don't know a whole lot about these other opportunities. I'm aware of them. I rub shoulders with other franchisors, and they're all great businesses and needed operations, needed services for sure. But for us, simplicity. At the end of the day, if a crew messes up and the house is supposed to be white and they painted it hot pink, worst case scenario is they get it, you repaint it, right? It's not the equivalent of, I don't know, mismatched roof tiles or some big significant, other, I guess I don't want to bash on anybody else, but it's really very simple, and even the act of painting, sure, certainly there's a craft behind it, but when we're painting homes and houses, it's relatively simple. When we're marketing it, it's relatively simple. When we're giving estimates, it's not a hard sell. It's simply, providing the quote to the customer. So simplicity is probably the biggest thing that comes to mind when I think about our core differentiator between other opportunities out there.
Yeah, I think simplicity is a great focal point, right, for that, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of simplicity, but to really win in this space, you need consistent, excellent execution of several simple processes. And that's not easy to do. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy to be consistent across all those things. And it sounds like you folks have really cracked the code. You've helped your franchisees crack that code. Really appreciate you taking time for this conversation today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad we could spotlight Painter1 and give us a real close look at this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Jason gave us a lot to think about with Painter1. Let's review 3 things that really set it apart. First, the equity pool. When most franchisor systems sell, its franchisees really get nothing out of that transaction. And yet Painter1 set aside 10% of the system as an equity pool for its owners so that if it's ever sold, they're going to share in the outcome as well. Now, secondly, Jason talked about the mentorship program. New owners train in the field with an existing successful Painter1 owner. Now, this is not a corporate coach who's never run a location. This is a mentor that is compensated by the franchisor to guide new franchisees through their first year. And third, the unique open territory model. Painter1 owners aren't locked into just a fixed set of zip codes. When they go into a new market, the market grows as demand grows. And they do cap it. They have guardrails in place so that they never get too saturated with Painter1 franchisees in an area, but they can build that brand visibility that benefits every owner in it. Now, if this business feels worth exploring to you, I encourage you to approach it with intention. Strong franchisors like Painter1, they get constant inbound interest, and they can tell quickly which candidates came prepared. And I can help you become one of them. Together, we can clarify whether Painter1 truly fits your goals. We can get a clear picture of your financial readiness and make sure you understand how franchisors evaluate candidates before that first real conversation. Candidates who skip this step often make small mistakes that really undercut their credibility, and I help you to avoid those mistakes. This would be a chance for us to both figure out together whether moving forward makes sense. I welcome you to book a no-cost 20-minute conversation with me and take the next step the right way. I'm Scott Elliott, and this has been another episode of Franchise Spotlight.